which represent Shiva's penis. This assertion is very difficult to prove.
Whoa! Pause. All right. Did the Aryan invasion actually happen? I saw this in my recommendation feed, and I was literally just talking about this in yesterday's video. I actually wanted to do a reaction to this because this is actually interesting. This has been a question on my mind. Do I believe it actually happened? No. I don't really think this happened. But still, it's still interesting to look at. But most experts disagree that it probably did not happen, and that's just probably just propaganda's sake. So, but still, I still want to hear, because the origins of European is
the region of South Asia is incredibly culturally diverse, a fact represented in its history. From the stylish Chola Empire to the luxurious Delhi Sultanate to the erudite Pallid dynasty, the Indian subcontinent has produced an incredible array of philosophical, cultural, and religious developments. One of the many elements of this diversity is the divide between its two major language families, with the so-called Indo-European language family predominating in the north, and the Dravidian language family predominating in the south. The Indo-European languages of India are related to the languages of Iran and Europe. They include both ancient tongues like Pali and Sanskrit, and modern tongues like Hindu and Punjabi. There are many origin theories for how Indo-European languages appeared in India, the most famous being the Aryan invasion theory, which postulates that Indo-European speakers arrived in India from the west over 3,000 years ago as a great warrior wave, displacing the peoples and civilizations who had lived there before. Since its inception in the 19th century, this theory has been the subject of much scrutiny, with geneticists, philologists, historians, and archaeologists questioning its viability. In this episode, we will investigate this theory and its opposing viewpoints, and try to answer the question, did the Aryan migration really happen? Welcome to our video on the Indo-Aryan invasion. This video is sponsored by our YouTube...
I would say something, but I want to hear what kings and generals have to say.
Premise that a large-scale migration of Indo-European speakers into South Asia occurred in the Late Bronze Age, around 1800 to 1500 BCE. The Indo-Aryans ostensibly were an offshoot of the Proto-Indo-Europeans, the same prehistoric people from which other ethno-linguistic groups like the Iranians, Slavs, Germans, and Greeks also stemmed. Originating from somewhere in what is now southern Ukraine, Russia, or Central Asia, they are said to have spread out of their original homeland around the middle 3rd or early 2nd millennium BCE, and moved into India from the Central Asian regions of Bactria and Margiana. This would mean that they arrived in India during the mature Harappan period, when the Great Bronze Age Indus River Valley civilization was nearing its end. Proponents of the Aryan invasion theory, which has its roots in the 19th century European colonial scholars, claim that the arrival of the Indo-Aryans is what caused the fall of the Indus River Valley civilization, and that it was these Indo-Aryan invaders who introduced the ancient Vedic beliefs, which would eventually evolve into the Hindu faith. In more recent times, a counter-theory to the Aryan invasion has emerged, that of indigenous Aryanism. This theory, which has roots in modern Indian nationalism, claims that the Aryans were not different from the Indus Valley civilization, and thus were native to the region. The debates between these two theories are nuanced and multi-layered, with many scholars not fitting fully into one camp or the other.
Both theories honestly have some sort of narrative to it, to be honest, because people who like Europeans who don't really want to like admit that they're like family to Indians, they like to subscribe to the Indo like freaking the Aryan invasion, just to fit their narrative. And the Indians who basically who's like the opposite, it's like literally two opposites. It's the Indians want to say that they're related to the Europeans, they fit their narrative, and the Europeans don't want to. It's honestly, I find it stupid. I find it stupid. Like, does it really matter? I just want to look at the concrete, objective facts. That's how I just feel this, to be honest. Although the whole Indians migrating to Europe seems more like the actual possibility that has a lot more evidence to it than Indo-Aryan invaders. Like, that's just my personal opinion. But yeah, I'm not gonna say too much yet. So
they are also controversial due to their political nature. On the one hand, the colonial roots of the Aryan invasion theory show a disregard for India's earliest indigenous peoples, with colonial European scholars considering the invading Indo-Aryans to be a force that brought civilization to the supposed barbarians who lived there before. On the
holy mother of propaganda. Holy mother of Eurocentric supremacy propaganda. Holy shit. Bro, the Indian subcontinent was civilized before Europe, bruh. What? Holy hell. That makes no sense. These people were way more advanced and civilized before any European touched this place. Before Europe itself became civilized. What am I hearing? Holy, I swear, bro. The Europeans and their supremacy complex, it needs to be studied. Christ. And this is coming from someone who's partially European himself. Oh my God. Well, European descent, because I wasn't born in Europe. But I'm European descent as well as African descent. I'm Creole. But like, I don't really... and that's the thing. I'm not out to identify with this group, that group. Bro, I don't really care. I mean, I could. That's the thing. I could. Like, my face doesn't even look African. My face is freaking European looking. My skin tone is light skin when I'm not tan as shit. If I really wanted to, I could. I could identify as both. It's funny. Both genes are like, you can see both genes inside of me clearly. Like, but I don't really care about both. Honestly, I don't really care. It's nothing special to me. I don't know why people care so much about this. Having, especially Europeans, bro, their supremacy complex, bro, needs to be studied. Oh my God.
On the other hand, many indigenous Aryanists are Hindu nationalists who ideologically reject any foreign presence or influence in India, despite the historical reality that outside cultures have influenced India since ancient times.
Okay.
With these issues in mind, let us see what evidence exists for one side or the other, keeping in mind that we can only scratch the surface in such a short video. A common source used in discussions of the Indo-Aryan homeland is that of philology, meaning the study of ancient texts. The texts used in this case are the Vedas, the oldest religious literature of the religion known as Hinduism. These are very ancient texts indeed, with many scholars considering them to date back to the 1500s to 1200s BCE. The various gods described in the Vedas are distinctly similar to the known gods in other ancient Indo-European pantheons, like that of Greece, and thus show that they are part of a broader familial religious tradition. Archaeologists have also noted how the ancient language of the Vedas may provide clues and insight into the migratory patterns of the Indo-Aryans and how they interacted with other cultures. Various groups of people in the Vedas, such as the so-called Dashas, are portrayed as enemies in the text, and their religious traditions are different from those of the Vedic ones. This might indicate a historical clash of cultures, although scholars differ on whether the Dashas lived in Iran, Central Asia, or if they were the pre-Aryan cultures of India. Thus, this is not specific proof that the Indo-Aryans migrated into India and displaced the pre-existing populations there, only that they warred with other cultures at some point or another. Other avenues of research include dialectical distinctions within the Vedas or comparisons within other ancient languages, like Old Avestan, the most archaic form of the Iranic language found in ancient Zoroastrian texts. There is some evidence of loanwords from very old Indo-Aryan dialects in some Finno-Ugric languages, which are found in northern Eurasia.
Oh, wow.
These suggest that Indo-Europeans lived up north and then moved east before entering South Asia. In addition, there is evidence within the Vedas of different Sanskrit dialects. Thus, it is likely that Indo-Europeans came slowly and did not come in one big wave. This migration does not appear to have been an invasion, and in fact, the Vedas show some familiarity with modern-day Afghan, Pakistani, and North Indian landscapes. This suggests that the ancients who wrote it were born and raised in the region, and were...
Okay. Okay, so it wasn't an invasion, but just a simple little migration. Okay. Well, that's based on this evidence here. Just because you have evidence on something doesn't make it true, but I'm just saying. Okay, that would be interesting. I'm not disagreeing that there couldn't have been Indo-Europeans who went from Europe to India, like the Indian subcontinent. That could very much have happened. I'm just saying, based on the information that I know, it seemed like the opposite happened. It's based like that. My opinion could change.
Not recent migrants. Thus, if a migration did occur, it was not a violent mass invasion, but a slow process that took place over multiple generations. The difficulty of philological evidence lies in the fact that these religious texts, with metaphorical allusions, are not meant to be taken literally. They may be based on cultural events, much like the ancient Greek Iliad might be. However, they are still cultural products that are meant to be seen through a religious lens. Thus, any definitive evidence from philology cannot occur through literalist readings. Another avenue through which scholars have analysed the Aryan invasion theory is that of genetics. Genetics is a tricky discipline for studying history. While it can show extensive links between peoples, it can also be easily misused for extrapolations from very small genetic samples. From what we can attest from genetic studies of haplogroups, meaning groups of DNA that indicate familial lineages, there is indeed some connection between the modern Indian people and other Indo-European populations throughout Iran and Europe. These vary from region to region, with some North Indian populations who speak Indo-European languages having more genetic connections than their southern counterparts. This evidence shows us that there are indeed Indo-European genetic links in India, but this information must be digested in a nuanced way. To start with, while these genetic connections may indicate that several Indian ethnic groups share a common Western ancestry, they do not show when or how these movements occurred. They could have been from migrations into India that occurred hundreds or thousands of years after the supposed Bronze Age Aryan invasion took place, or even due to reverse migrations. Thus, it is difficult to draw solid conclusions from genetic analyses. In addition, there is evidence that Indo-European languages are spreading throughout South Asia. Linguistic evidence is another tool that is used to study population movement beyond mere textual analysis. This can be immensely useful in mapping out cultural change or loanwords. However, it is difficult to map out something as intangible as the spoken word, or to figure out when certain languages reached certain areas of the Indian subcontinent, and if their arrival lines up chronologically with the supposed Aryan invasion. This is in large part because the ancient Indian Bronze Age was a period with little if any writing, and also because we have very minimal understanding of the previous linguistic landscape in northern India that existed before Indo-European languages came to predominate across the region. Scholars have tried to map out population spread by looking at Indo-European loanwords in Dravidian languages. For instance, there are pockets of Indo-European language speakers in the predominantly Dravidian south of India, and pockets of Dravidian language speakers in northern India and Pakistan. Studies of loanwords for specific plants suggest that Indo-Europeans may have slowly moved into South Asia's central regions. Some other examples show a major contribution to natural landscape names by Indo-European speaking populations, with Sino-Tibetan and Dravidian names appearing within these regions. This is an example of pre-Indo-European populations being present in these now Indo-European majority regions. It is possible to show that distinct migration waves occurred through these genetic and linguistic studies. What is more difficult is trying to understand how and why they happened. In the most general terms, we can see that there is neither a fully indigenous Aryan population in India nor a unified migratory wave. In fact, the migrating groups of Indo-Aryans were likely never unified, and the various peoples and tribes who participated in these migrations made various way stops in their multi-generational journey before settling.
But the thing is like, why isn't there like, if an invasion did happen, shouldn't there be like archaeological evidence of like swords, weapons. You know, when an invasion happens, bruh, there's so much stuff that gets left behind. I mean, like skulls, right? Like decaying corpses, not decaying like skeletons, basically. You know, there's so much stuff that usually just gets left behind, buried. You know what I mean? Um, that's that's what I find weird. That's what I find really weird.
Within South Asia, it is hard to pin down when exactly these movements occurred. However, they certainly do not align flawlessly with the idea of a sudden large-scale invasion in the late Bronze Age, hypothesized in the Aryan invasion theory. Archaeology is another useful tool that provides material evidence about
the past. Oh my god, I was literally just talking
which, when examined in context, can help support or disprove the validity of written sources. More evidence regarding the Aryan invasion, or lack thereof, can be found in the archaeological and economic evidence from the Indus Valley Civilization's mature Harappan period, which occurred between 2600 and 1900 BCE and the aftermath of that great civilization's decline. Archaeologists have unearthed evidence that the ancient Indus River Valley civilization had trade links with the so-called Bactria-Margiana archaeological complex, which has been associated with the homeland of an Indo-European-speaking pre-Indo-Aryan people. Archaeological surveys have also revealed that the Indus Valley people sometimes migrated into these supposedly Indo-Aryan lands, attempting to establish colonies in places like Shotagai in Afghanistan to extract resources like lapis lazuli. This implies that the two great civilizations were in contact. However, whether the Bactria-Margiana people moved into the Indus Valley civilization in significant numbers is harder to pinpoint.
But still, again, the archaeological evidence should show that some invasion happened. I mean, really, I'm still waiting to hear, like, oh, weapons were found dated to this period or something, or skulls were found dated to this period. That had like equipment around or something like that, bro. You know, it's funny. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of when I was arguing with a moron in the past before. I mentioned this moron actually. This is a guy who can't stop cyberstalking my YouTube channel, but you know, the moron tried to tell me that. Barbados was conquered by the British. Oh god. Just stay with me here. This is relevant to the video. And I looked at him and I was like, buddy, Barbados was an uninhabited island. And he was like, it was an uninhabited island because all the native population was dead. And I'm like, bro, so why did archaeological data show that the natives left the island before any Europeans even got into contact with them? Like, bruh. Like, archaeological evidence is like the main source of shit like this, bruh. If there is no archaeological evidence to show that an invasion happened, because when an invasion happens, bro, you are going to have so much stuff left over. An invasion is messy. Like, you should have more than enough evidence that, yes, there was clearly an invasion here. But it does remind me of that. He couldn't really respond to that. He just kept on saying a whole bunch of nonsense. And he was like, oh, your country was invaded. You're not British. That doesn't make sense. Just because someone conquers someone else doesn't mean that other group becomes whoever conquers them, even though that is wrong. Kid didn't even know what assimilation is. But even then, dude, it's like, dude, that's not even what happened with Barbados. And archaeological evidence showed that the freaking natives left like hundreds of years before the freaking Europeans even like got in contact with them. Because Barbados was it wasn't really a good place to live on. It was they were displaced by other hostile natives that were very aggressive. Archaeological evidence showed that. In fact, actually, You could they were displaced around this time period, around like 3038 BC to like just around this time period, the ancient period actually. Yeah, later, way before Europeans came. And you know what's funny? You can go to Barbados and you can find the preservations of barely what the natives left behind, because the natives didn't even bother to really and truly like live in Barbados that much. But you can still find like what they left behind. It's really preserved actually. So,
for instance, there are hardly any clues of chariot raids, which are a staple of Indo-European cultures, into the Indus Valley.
Yeah, exactly,
With
bro.
that said, it is certainly possible that the Bactrians and the Indus did cross-migrate during this period. In fact, some scholars like Ascopopola even claim that the artifacts of the mature Harappan period are so distinct from previous periods that it may very well suggest that the Indo-Aryans had already moved in by then, and made a significant impact on the material culture of the region. However, no large-scale destruction seems to have happened within the Indus civilization at this time.
Yeah.
The same goes for the decline of the Indus River Valley civilization during the late Harappan period between 1900 and 1500 BCE. While the regionalization of pottery styles during this era suggests a breakdown in central authority, there is only one site in the Indus region that shows large-scale violence, the so-called massacre site of Mohenjo-Daro. This site, located at one of the gates of the great Indus Valley city of Mohenjo-Daro, features a multitude of skeletons with weapon-induced injuries. However, it is the only archaeological site from the
That's what you're supposed to be seeing,
decline of the Indus Valley civilization and supposed Aryan migrations, which shows evidence of any large-scale violence. What we can see is evidence of a slow abandonment of the old-school urban centers like Harappa and Rakigahi. Indus artifacts have become more regional in style, and we see the rise of new customs, such as the use of horses in religious rituals. The cultural continuity of ever more regional styles of pottery and terracotta figurines, alongside new stylistic innovations, suggest an all-too-familiar story. A lot of locals remained in the region, while some new populations trickled in, and they slowly creolized into new populations. This has happened multiple times in South Asian history, such as with the coming of the Mughals. The final sort of evidence we will investigate is the trickiest, that of religion and rituals. This is a separate set of evidence from the study of the Vedas, which, while a religious text, is examined from a more philological than a theological angle. Instead, we will combine textual and archaeological evidence of religious sites to see if they offer us any insight into the truth behind the Aryan invasion theory. A nexus point of this debate is Shiva, a major Hindu deity linked to the Vedas. Many indigenous Aryanists have claimed that Indus artifacts, like the famous Pashupati seal, which depicts a cross-legged, three-faced man controlling a tiger and a unicorn, is evidence of the worship of Shiva in the pre-Aryan Indus River Valley civilization. They also make this claim based on the presence of small pillars, which are similar to lingas, objects of worship which represent Shiva's penis. This assertion is very difficult to prove.
Whoa! Oh, pause. I was not expecting that. What? Yo. Okay. Wow. Okay, that took me aback. What? Okay, bro.
The function of either type of artifact during the Indus period is unknown. In addition, Shiva hardly appears in the Vedas except as his avatar Rudra, who was a Vedic deity in his own right in the Vedic period. The origins of Shiva worship do likely originate in northeast India, but it did so several millennia after the Bronze Age, in the 4th to 5th centuries CE, when local Vedic cults merged with Iranian wind deities to form Proto-Saivite worship. Similarly, evidence from the Vedas on the so-called Soma drink, which sages are said to drink during nighttime, has been used to find an original Indo-Aryan homeland somewhere in Bactria and Margiana. Some archaeological excavations in sites in the region have found some small drinking vessels, but it is difficult to say if they are used for soma or if the drink was produced there. Similarly, it is very difficult to see any evidence of Indo-Iranian rituals in the region. Some horse burials, an Indo-European ritual, appear in places like Delhi in the late Harappan period. In addition, water purification, which was common in later times throughout South Asia, appears to have been an Indus Valley ritual. The water ritual shows that some Vedic rituals have their origins in Bactria. The latter ritual shows that some rituals were part of the Indus religious repertoire. Thus, it is possible that some of the elements of Vedic worship originated in Bactria and later came down via migrants. Of the textual evidence. Thus, religious analyses show a very complex picture, one of both contact with Bactria and local continuity. On the other hand, there are some clues as to some local and Bactrian ritual practices in post-Indus northern India, suggesting both mobility and local continuity. Such is the nature of religions. They are social and fluid constructs which are always contingent on their surroundings. A slow and likely long-term movement of some foreigners into South Asia and mixing with the locals likely produced the Vedic pantheons of the Iron Age. As we have seen, it is very difficult to definitively prove that either the Aryan invasion or the indigenous Aryanism theory is fully correct. From what we can see, a slow, inconsistent and disorganized movement out of Central Asia moved into India and coexisted with the previous locals during the Bronze and Iron Ages. These two groups, migrant and local, were both internally diverse, cross-pollinating with each other and amongst themselves before.
So this is my conclusion based on all of this. It was a cultural exchange that happened, which is so common. It's normal throughout history. Both sides were coming back and forth with each other. It wasn't like one side just freaking migrated all the way to the other. No, it seemed like it was a what's the word I'm looking for? It was like back and forth. Yeah, it was like a back and forth situation where both sides were going back and forth. And yeah, it caused this to happen.
Merging into later cultural groups. There are both native and Aryan elements in Iron Age Indian religious and cultural systems, thus in a way showing that neither theory is fully correct. This plurality shows
because it probably was just like back and forth. Each side was going back and forth. That's why the theory is probably not correct. No theory isn't really fully correct. It had to be back and forth. That's the only logical explanation.
An eternal South Asian pattern, that of diversity too complex for either simplistic theory to account for. The complex evidence we have shows that mixing and hybridization occurred throughout the Bronze Age and continued onwards throughout Indian history. Thus, rather than perceiving the Bronze Age migrations as a uniquely grand event, or holding on to a false notion of a fully indigenous Aryan South Asia, it is better to learn from Indian history and embrace its colourful tapestry. Indian history has always been fluid and diverse, from the dawn of the Indus Valley to the dusk of the Mughals, and that is perhaps the most important lesson of South Asia's odyssey through time. More videos on the ancient history of India.
Very, very, very interesting video. Okay, so I have a new perspective on this now. Okay, this actually changed my perspective on it. I view it more as just a cultural exchange just happened between the two. Not just cultural exchange happened between the two. They both just was like going back and forth between each other, leading to that there, right? So that makes sense to me. Anyway, if you have any videos like this that you want to see my reaction to, you want to hear what I have to say, if you'd like what I have to say, you can always suggest it to me in the comments below. Eventually I will do it. Like the video if you haven't already. If you're new, subscribe for more videos like this. You can go check out my other videos. I have so much videos like this on my channel at this point. You know what I mean? Like, come on, bruh. You know what I mean, man? Right? So yeah, man. Thank you for watching and goodbye.